Hello, I am Nicole Eloise of Rebirth with Nicole Eloise, and today I'm diving into essentially a continuation of the posts that I just launched across LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. So if you follow me on any of those platforms, you likely saw my recent post on how everything created, everything born into humanity, into this reality experience, is born in darkness. And what we are facing today as a collective is the result of how, if something is initially born, it is born in. So think of a baby, right? When a baby first comes out, they're covered in blood. Maybe there's some poop on them. Their hair is they're like partially bald. Maybe they have like some spots of like furry hair and it's like matted, and maybe the baby has a cone head. Like, it's not, usually they look like an alien, but we know that those babies will they'll transform over time. We know that it's not like this baby was born like this and that's what it's going to look like forever. We know that in the first period of time in that baby's life, it's going to take a lot more tending to, which can be quite exhausting. But we don't give up because we trust that that's not how it stays forever. That baby becomes something else over time when it's allowed to develop properly. But in order for it to develop in a healthy way, you have to give it proper nourishment. It needs love. Like, it genuinely needs love. It needs sunlight. It needs to move its body. It needs all of these things, right? However, when aspects of human expression are born into humanity, and at first glance it looks like this alien, and it's screaming and it wants so much from us, and it's covered in blood and poop. Sometimes these aspects that are born into humanity are suppressed because we judge them off of their initial expression, which is an unevolved expression of what it is to become. We suppress those aspects of ourselves. And in my post, I liken this to, imagine if when that baby was born, you locked it in a room, you turned the lights off because you were like, that thing is fucking ugly. I don't want to have to look at it. I'm horrified. It screams, it cries, it makes my skin crawl when I look at it. And I'm not saying people feel that way about babies, but for example, right? And you put it in this room in your house that no one ever goes into. Maybe it's like the attic and it has no windows, and you turn the lights off and it's just in darkness and cold. And over time, obviously, this baby, if it survives, is going to be like, what I envision in my mind is like this creature, right? It becomes this horrifying creature that's been deprived of love. It thinks it's a monster, and so it becomes a monster. So our suppressed aspects are like that. And so I've been asked regularly things like, how can I love this part of myself? Here's how it exhibits. And I tell the person, once we bring light to that part, once you find a way to meet that part of you with love, you're not taking in that part of you and having it remain as you've experienced it and witnessed it. You're bringing it into yourself, and it is transformed through an alchemical process. And that process is what I guide people through. I ensure that you have the capacity to move through the process prior to actually doing it. This is, I'm talking about my 12 session metamorphosis container. We first do foundations. We get the lay of the land, understand kind of what we're working with. And then I work with you to ensure that your nervous system can handle what we're going to do. I help you implement practices. I combine experience, wisdom, my own wisdom gained through experience, alongside spiritual gifts that I have. So before each session, I'm dropping in and essentially taking a look at what's going on in your field and bringing to the surface what will be most impactful for us to focus on first. So I combine a bit of a formula, which is the masculine architecture, with the feminine fluidity, which is needed to allow for us to flow with what is necessary for the specific person at the specific time, given the specific other things, other contexts for that person in their life. All of that comes together to create this experience of first fortifying, and then I take your hand and we step into the fucking fire. We step into the arena. And that is where you're going to want to likely give up. You're going to feel like you're just too broken. You're going to likely feel like maybe I don't really understand what's inside of you. And you're going to wonder if there's actually hope for yourself. You're going to wonder if transformation is actually possible for you. You're going to have a lot of fears come up. And that's when you face off with these parts of you that need to evolve. And through that transformative fire, we shed layers of yourself which were never actually the layers that you were seeing and experiencing, and we allow them to transform. And our final phase is focus, and again, all of this, there's a structure and then a lot of flow. And the structure part of the final phase is, and this often comes through the entire session, I'm connecting into your higher expression, and I am allowing you to get tastes of that higher expression more and more and more, so that we can bring you into deeper alignment with the truth of who you are, so that you may begin to release these aspects of yourself that you've identified with and been maybe afraid to let people get to know you. Like, we have this big fear of vulnerability, like true vulnerability, true like deep honesty. Everything tends to lean at a collective level. By and large, there's a tendency to lean more towards surface level. And this is something that for me, I'm built to go into the depths. And so from the time I was very little, I was asking my mother, I was basically in existential crisis at the age of 5, trying to understand the meaning of life and what we're doing here. And by the time I was in high school, I wanted to talk about all of these things that happen in the world and all of these experiences that I have within myself and all of these depths that I feel within myself and that I could feel within others around me. And I would be shut out by people because at the time it just felt like rejection. And now I understand that when we have aspects of ourselves that we believe are not okay to be revealed, then we begin to live life in this way of we need to control. We need to control how others perceive us. This is unconscious, right? Well, it's a combination of conscious and unconscious. We feel like we need to control what aspects of ourselves the world gets to see. And that's when we get this tight grip. And when we want to drink or use substances, it's this desperate desire to connect with the feeling of ourselves. So, and this is challenging, right? Because let's take me when I was in my 20s, and after 10 years of sobriety, because I had a drinking problem in high school, I just talked about why I was drinking. And there was a multitude of other things. There was trauma, my nervous system was dysregulated from the time I was born due to what I was born into. There was so many things. By the time I was 20, I think 6, from 26 to 30, I started drinking again because I was like, I can't take this. I was holding on so tight, and I was like, I can't do this. And there was all of these aspects of myself that I had learned to shame and suppress and not look at, because I had perceived, even my own mother, witnessing sneaks of aspects of me and looking at me in horror. So when we are triggered, these shadow aspects fly out of us. And they don't align with who we want to be, but they are a part of what comprises the entirety of us. And we cannot successfully reject any part of ourselves. It's a futile effort. As much as you may want to believe that you can do that, there will be consequences. It will, generally speaking, most impact you and those you care most about. So, okay, going back to when I was 26, and I was, I try not to knock my microphone off here, and I was, I'd been holding on so tight, and I was asking other people, I was like, I'm in 12-step recovery, towards the end, I was steering away from that program because I was looking around and I didn't even see very many examples. There weren't examples of people that were in that program long term who were genuinely happy. It was like this game of how tightly can you hold on. And I would witness what we referred to as old timers who had been in this program for a long time, working this program or whatever it was that they were doing. And they were all quite angry. There was rare exceptions, but I later came to understand more as to how they had gotten to where they were, and there was some other things mixed in there too. But by and large, I wasn't seeing a solution is the big part of it. And I really felt like I was tormented inside. I had created this facade that made me feel better about myself. I had developed a successful career. Growing up, I grew up in, a dysfunctional home. I didn't think I was ever going to have any type of successful career, making decent money. So money for me was the big thing. That to me, I wanted safety because of what I had experienced growing up, and I wanted comfort. I wanted to be able to buy clothes that I wanted. I wanted to not have to worry about having enough money for food. I didn't ever want to have to worry about being homeless because I'd experienced homelessness. I'd experienced, getting my clothes in trash bags because there wasn't enough money to go out and buy what we wanted. A lot of financial insecurity and a lot of chaotic energy in the home. And so I really just I want my own space. I want to make enough money that I don't have to worry about my home or food to eat or clothes. And so up until 30, That was my focus. And I succeeded. I have always been good at holding a vision and successfully bringing a vision into reality. Which, as I've unpacked things more and more, I have come to understand why I have this capacity and what I've experienced. You can believe in past lives or not believe in past lives, but following a near-death experience, I've had past lives flooding in and begin to reveal to me why I've had these understandings from the time I was so young. So I created money, but I still had there was still blocks in there around holding that money, which I later learned had to do with my sense of worthiness, my nervous system, a number of things. But by 30, I'm making multi six figures. I own my own condo in the Boston area, in Southie, if anyone knows Southie. But I had started drinking again because I was in so much pain internally, which I now have come to realize there was some really, really big, really, really dark aspects of myself that I was really fucking scared of. And I remembered I've always, so now I also understand I've always had access to the gifts that I now use in this work that I do with others, which means I could feel far beyond the words that were said. And what I could feel was fear in my own mother, and I could feel what that fear was. And so I had come to believe that I had a monster inside of me. And I had an example of what that monster could become in another person in my family who had the same things alive within them, but which never were allowed to transform into healthy expression, which is why I'm so passionate about what I do, because that person carried very similar energy to me and very similar gifts to me, and what they did with that is cause a lot of harm. They were really good. They caused a lot of harm, and they were believed to be a sociopath. They were really good at inspiring action in other people, but they would find people that were weak and trick them into doing things, like take advantage of like drug addiction and trick them into doing things that this person wanted for their own selfish gain with no regard for that person, from what I have gleaned. And so they were essentially believed to be like sociopathic con artist who was also a sexual predator. And I had signals and could feel a lot of things that I knew could become that, and I was terrified, absolutely fucking terrified. And when you're a little kid and you have your mother look at you with that type of fear and you feel that type of fear off of you, it does something to you. And this is why I do what I do. I was designed for this work. I understand what it's like to be so fucking scared of yourself and also be so fucking afraid of this world and to feel like you are so deeply misunderstood. So, when I was 30, I had maybe I was 32, 31, 32. I had a near-death experience. I was drinking around the clock, and I just remember being like, I reached the mountaintop that I thought I wanted to reach. I've got the money, I've got the financial security, but I am a fucking nightmare. I am a nightmare. There were things that I did where I was living in, I had a certain, like a moral code. I knew to an extent the gifts that I had access to, and so I was adamant about only ever using those gifts to work in sales for companies that I genuinely believed in what they did. I genuinely believed in what they did. And if I questioned any aspect, I would push them. I would push the people within the company to help me understand, why do we do this thing? Why aren't we doing it this way? And I would find solutions, and I would not be able to put my weight behind something until I felt like I had tried to poke holes in it from a bunch of different directions and felt satisfied. And when I was in what we would refer to as a deal process, where we're working with a new, like maybe I identified a new company, I focused on the Silicon Valley area, so I would track who was getting funding. I would identify companies that I believed were going to, blow up, and get us in with them early, get contracts in place, which meant getting their executive team bought in on what it is that we could do for them. And I would understand their business and help them understand how it was going to integrate into their business and align with their business, their long-term objectives. And in this, I was always very clear that if I believe for any reason that proceeding with that, executing on the contract, was going to not be beneficial for either party, the company I worked for or the company I was selling to, I would interfere. There was one, actually, at the end of my career when I was in leadership, there was a few key times that I acted on this. We had a deal that was at the finish line, and I raised a red flag to the customer when they were about to sign the contract, because I found something on the back end that I realized could cause problems for them. We ended up getting the deal, and that company, absolutely, they adored us. They reached out to our co-founder, they reached out to all kinds of people, and they made comments, and they were over the moon, right? And that was me being terrified of what I had the capacity to be, and knowing that in order to sleep well at night, I needed to adhere to a strict code of conduct so that I could know for myself that I was not using my gifts for bad. And where do I want to go from here? I'm also just going to touch on the fact that when I mentioned the aspect of being my someone in my family being a sexual predator, so that was another thing that I was really afraid of. When I was a child, I got in trouble for things that was essentially me exploring. It was like what I now understand is sexual energy is creationary energy. I am someone that has the capacity to create in an enormous way, which I now see as a huge responsibility. Yes, a huge responsibility, but I don't mean that in a daunting way. When you're a child and you don't know that things aren't acceptable, you might be playing around and do something that is like sexual in nature and not understand. And when you're met with shame in response, now this becomes a distorted shadow aspect of you. And this is one, actually, I'm still untangling this layer. This has been one of the most challenging ones for me. And my current partner has done so much to help me on this front. I had done a lot of work before meeting him, and it's probably something that I will continue to alchemize. This is a big one. And again, it's like the more capacity we have to create, the more of these energies we have to learn how to master. And by more of these energies, I mean everyone has to learn how to not let their sexual desire overrun them, or their rage overrun them, or whatever it is. And I bring those two up specifically because there's a correlation there. So the more light energy you have the capacity to hold, the higher intensity of what you have to master. Someone made a comment to me a while back that feels related to this. The way I interpreted it felt related to this. Learning how to ride your dragon instead of having them ride or drag you, basically. So I've got a really fucking big dragon, and it's taking a lot to come into full mastery. And I certainly don't claim to have full mastery, but I do claim to have a level of mastery that I did not know would be possible for me. Okay, I'm going to pause 1 more second, see where I want to go with that. Okay, so what I want to share, because this will express usually differently for each person. And the result, I'm giving some examples here for a number of different things to just paint a clearer picture, and also be vulnerable myself, because I ask others to be very vulnerable with me, and I want it to be clear that this isn't like a therapy. I'm not a therapist who's just going to coldly write notes in their journal and like I'm a human being. I'm in the fucking fire with you, and I've walked through that fire myself before, and I know how much it burns. So with what I was talking about around that sexual energy, for me, what that looked like was, well, there was a number of things, right? You combine that with not having had any model for a healthy romantic partnership. Like, I didn't have a mother and father who were in partnership at all, let alone like exhibiting healthy behaviors within that. And I couldn't hold a stable relationship. Usually once the relationship got comfortable, I would get antsy, and my sexual desire was activated through I needed that excitement. I could not, and there's so many layers. I don't even know how to explain this because there's so many layers within this. But at a high level, I would meet someone, be like, oh, this, like, I'd be overcome with this excitement and desire, and it would be the highest high. And then usually it would be really volatile, which there's things I've also learned about the type of person we attract based on where we are and the energy that we hold. And so oftentimes there wasn't, I had a 5-year relationship in my 20s, which was the longest relationship. And then, and I remember towards the end of that relationship getting to this place where I was craving chaos. And I remember feeling like our sex life, I couldn't do it because it was too intimate and safe, and that was healing in many ways, but I also wasn't ready for it. And a similar thing happened with my my high school sweetheart, who, I don't know if he refers to me as that, but I think of him as that. And similarly with him, it was like, I would say that was probably one of my best relationships aside from the one that I'm in today. And I also know that I got antsy in that relationship. And it was like there was so much. I think of it now as like, maybe the surface looks like still water, but beneath the surface it's like boiling, and there's all this stuff because I was suppressing so much. Like, I had trauma, My nervous system was just going haywire all the time. And so I needed a distraction. And a comfortable, safe relationship is not adequate distraction. Chaos, danger, adequate distraction. And of course, I also have sexual trauma. I was raped. So shortly after I ended that high school relationship, which I was like 2 years or so, a year and a half or 2 years, I left, went overseas, came back, and the second person that I ever slept with, had sexual intercourse with, was a rape. And the third person was his friend, who he had lose his virginity to me while I was in shock, probably a combination of things. I had a lot of alcohol in my system. I think we had smoked. So I'm not sure, but I know that I was coming in and out of awareness, and it was devastating to be experiencing for a multitude of reasons, of course, and physically very, very traumatic. And so much of my adult life was promiscuity, the thrill. And I thought that career was where I was going to thrive, but I would never get to have a relationship that was loving, lasting, and one which got more satiating rather than starting off hot and then fizzling out. And as I spoke about in, again, those posts that I referenced, having posted just earlier this morning about how, so in the post I talked about how the things that we see as like the most horrific things for us to have to look at, the hardest things for us that we're like, I can fix all these other parts of myself, but that part, like, I don't think there's hope. That was for me, my sexual nature and my romantic partnerships, which of course that's entwined completely, right? And as I have proceeded since my near-death experience, where a lot of things snapped online in terms of what I'm here to do, that's a big part of it. So again, our hardest things are actually our greatest offerings for this collective. So if you think about having a range, right? And like the middle is 0, that's neutral. And on either side, you have, maybe it goes out to -50 and +50. The bigger that range for you, and let's say, okay, so the further into the negative, the shadow expression that you've gone, you now have equal capacity to bring that into light expression. And so the things that I have had to navigate, like processing, this person who I grew up knowing, I shared DNA with, who was a pedophile. I spent my life processing that lives in me. That was this person that most people would think of as like the person that's meant to be their biggest protector in life. Instead, I grew up, we were running away from that person and afraid that he might physically harm us, that he was a sexual predator. That was a lot to process from the time I was a small child. Technically, I learned about it around the age of 8 or 9, but I knew prior to that. Again, I can feel what moves through other people, and so I could feel what was within my mother, and so I already had that awareness. And I've also been able to connect into that person's energy for quite some time, and I've only just become conscious that is in fact what I am able to do. And that shame around being a woman who had been raped, which, so the story was this story of like, I am not valuable. I'm not valuable enough to be cherished. I'm probably some sort of monster, and that's why like I don't deserve to be cherished. I don't deserve to be protected. I don't get to be honored. And so all I get is like I'm gonna get the thrills. And then once it becomes stable, like a relationship, I get uneasy because it's like this, there was this underlying sense of like, I'm unsafe. I believe some aspect of it is around having this person really get to know me even more. What if I can't remain faithful to them because of my promiscuity? What if they get to know me more and they see this monster that lives inside of me and they leave me? I can't live through that. I'd rather walk away from them. So many things, right? And what I have seen myself stepping into, which before I met my current partner, I was like, am I fucking delusional? But lo and behold, it appears to be coming into fruition. And whether the full expression of that is with Joe, my current partner, or if something happens and one day we go our separate ways and come into different partnerships, I do believe that this is an aspect of what I'm here to offer the collective. Transmuting that shadow expression into its light expression and helping to form a new blueprint for union, which has to start with self-love. And self-love does not happen until we are willing to take in all parts of ourselves and remembering that we can only meet others as deeply as we have met ourselves. So in order to become capable of having a truly satiating relationship, we must first become capable of loving all aspects of ourselves. And some aspects that's going to become harder. And I don't mean that you aren't going to have a beautiful relationship until you've learned to love every aspect of yourself completely. But I do mean that if you want your love life in all the ways to become more satiating, that it starts at an individual level, whether you are in union or out of union. And I'm going to add one more layer to that. I've talked about this a little bit here and there, but another awareness that I've been coming into is so many families. Actually, I'm going to wait on that. That's a really complicated one to unpack. The high level I'm going to say is the parents and the health of their union is the foundation on which the children then stand. So if you are sacrificing your happiness for your children, it's not the path. And I don't mean go out and party and leave your kids at home. I mean, be in your family unit and prioritize the health of your partnership with your partner. That was a learning curve. I had that awareness, but when I moved in with Joe, my partner, it was challenging. I wasn't used to living with other people. I mean, I was an only child. I spent most of my life living by myself, with a few exceptions. And I mean, I had roommates, when I was in my 20s, and I lived with a couple of partners, but I've always been very comfortable living by myself. And for the, ever since 2020, after my near-death experience, I lived with one person for 6 months, but outside of that, I had my own space, and I knew that that was what I wanted and needed, and I had to learn safety in that. Like, I really struggled to feel safe around other humans, and I didn't realize to what extent that was until I began awakening further and coming into deeper levels of awareness of what was happening within me. Okay, let me now see where I want to go with this. Okay, so again, the overarching concept of what we're talking about here is we collectively are being tasked right now with growing up as a species. And that's a big overarching theme. So the aspect of that I'm speaking about right now is, so bringing back that concept of like, we exist in polarity. And each of these things, so think about, say you have the capacity for, well, like, let's bring back that, this is challenging. I wish, it's tough for me to grasp onto something when I'm not feeling into someone specifically in front of me, like what an example would be. But let's just take like a rough made up example, right? Say, and this isn't super made up, but you have the capacity for hate, and your capacity for hatred goes to like -1,000. We're working on, what I do with people is we look at this and we say, I hold your hand through it, and it's like, I fucking get it. It's terrifying to stare at this thing, and it looks like you're a monster, and it looks like you should probably fucking lock yourself away, and you should probably run away from your family because, you know, you're a danger to them, you're a danger to society. Maybe you should just end it all, right? I get it. Like, I get it. It's really fucking hard. It's so dark in these, when we've kept these things inside of us and not talked about them, and we have not known who to talk to about them. And I have said this before, but like, I offer, like, if you would like an NDA, if you would like to not have sessions recorded, I understand, and we can do that. Obviously, if you tell me that you're intending to harm yourself or someone else, I cannot honor that confidentiality. But if we're talking about what has happened or what you experience inside of yourself, let me hold that space for you. Because there are some things in there that can come up, right? If there are some people that enjoy, they get a thrill out of making someone fearful. If I feel that in you, I'll feel that in you, and I'll know what you're doing. So please know that up front. Outside of that, when you've got your darkness and you're looking at it thinking you're a monster, like, I get it, and I will stand there with you, and we will learn to look at it with curiosity, and we will unpack it, and we will slowly bring more and more parts of that into the light. Now, again, remembering the initial example I gave was like 0 to 50, and that was just a random example that I gave before. But what I'm trying to convey right now is, say your capacity for hatred is -1,000. What I want you to understand is that you now have the capacity for +1,000 of love to express through you. We get expanded through these things. And right now, there's a lot in shadow. And that's why the world looks so scary and dark, and why so many of us are addicted to our phones and drugs and alcohol or sex or whatever it is, because we're running away from these parts of ourselves that we are so fucking afraid of actually looking at and being with. And however, the frequency is shifting on this planet, and in doing so, it's becoming increasingly less possible to ignore these parts of ourselves because what we are meant to be moving into is that heaven on earth. But how do we get there? By bringing light to what's been in shadow, so that we now have access to this other side. And we no longer are afraid of ourselves, and we are no longer being eaten from the inside by shame. Shame is one of the big things that causes distortion to begin with. You could almost, I would hazard a guess that the source of the bulk, if not all, of our collective shadow is born from shame. Shame and fear. Because there's also the fear of the unknown, so when we look at things like racism or homophobia or transphobia, which I also have other things that I could say on that, but at a really high level, what I want to say is it's fear of what we don't understand, fear of the unknown, fear of, well, I'm actually going to also add in things like homophobia, transphobia, all of those things are also oftentimes stemming from shame still. And what I mean by that is, say we were raised to believe, and I could trace this back to like its earliest days, right? But for right now, I'm going to focus on like modern day. Say you were raised to believe that if you're gay, men might be violent towards you. Then say you're a little boy and you have so much love for your friend who's also a little boy. But say you got confused internally around, well, what if I'm gay? Right? It's just this innocent thing. You just love your friend, but you're too afraid to ask anyone, like, does that mean I'm gay? Which, like, obviously someone would be like, no, you just love your friend. That can stem into a fear that becomes unconscious because we were just unwilling to look at it because there's so much fear based on what we saw out in the world in response to people being gay, that now we actually have an unconscious fear that we might be gay. And now we project what is actually self-hatred towards this part of ourself that we've actually just misunderstood, that now we're projecting that outwards. And I know that can be a challenging concept, but we're going to leave that one at that for right now. So, I want to also touch on, so the work that I do, and I do one-off sessions, right? If you just want to dip your toe in the waters, I do one-off sessions. I have a bunch of one-off sessions this week with people that are wanting to just dip their toes in the water. I also have some folks that I work with consistently that I'm meeting with this week. But a number of one-off sessions, which are always exciting, and like fun for me too, because it's a whole new person. I dive into their energy field prior to the session and get to kind of like check things out. And I'm fascinated by humans. Like, I am built for this work for so many reasons, but one of them is like, honestly, I have craved deep connection from the moment I was born, and had such a thirst for it throughout my whole life that this work that I do, while people might come to me afraid that I'm judging them, I'm like, let's fucking go. Like, I don't really, not that I don't care how dark your depths are. I care, but not from a judgmental space, from a space of curiosity. I see humans, like, my mind is so solution oriented, which is beautiful. Um, and so, and not from the space of I need to fix everything from fear, but more like, oh, I can see there's this thread here, and let's pull this thread by maybe I ask you a question and you'll be like, why the fuck is she asking me to, like, there's something that I channeled through that I meant to ask someone who I'm meeting with this week about. And at first glance, they might be like, why are you asking me to talk about that? You know? But it's like, I'm pulling threads and I'm getting you to go into places that you resist. And I know that that's uncomfortable, and I don't lead you into your darkest depths right out the gate. We get to know each other. And it's a little different for one-off sessions because I do try to give the person as much impact as possible in a single session. But I feel like humanity is starving for true connection. How do we get that experience? Through the experience of other people trusting us with the things that they're afraid to show anyone else. That to me is like, that's the, like, oh, I fucking love that. Like, yeah, show me your dark side. Like, show me your dark side. That's what I'm here for. And I know that it's like, once we go in there, and how this usually goes is like, we go and explore some shadow aspect of someone, and I can feel their energy almost like, are you judging me? Are you judging me? And then they start to realize, like, I'm not judging them. And then they're like, oh, okay, is this not that bad then? And they're not saying this, but I'm feeling all of this move through them. And then they start to look at it in a different light. It's like they turn back at that thing. They're like, wait, it's not a monster? And I'm like, no, it's not a monster. And then we start exploring it. And then over time, they evolve into this person where it's like, holy shit, like, this is amazing. And I live for that process. I have been doing that process for myself intuitively for my whole life in a variety of ways. Obviously, some areas were harder than others and took longer. But transformation is my fucking jam. Like, I live for that process. Maybe at some point I'll even post, like, I worked with someone at one point who did my nutrition plan and then gave me like a workout plan, and we would do before and after photos. And because of how motivated I am with progression and transformation, it was like I went from this, like, you know, right out of COVID, emotional eating, like the squishiest that probably I'd ever been, to like fucking not cut, but like for a female body, right? And for someone that wasn't about to be getting, I wasn't like training to go get on a stage and to do like, what would that be, a bodybuilding competition. But it was a pretty drastic and fast transformation. And like, I understand a lot about how to prompt massive transformation, how to make sure it happens effectively and in a way that is sustainable, which means you can't be impatient. You can't, you got to trust me also. Like, if you were an expert at this, you probably wouldn't be coming to me. So you got to trust me. And that means not always understanding why I'm recommending certain things, but doing it. And like, if you're going to invest the type of money that my container costs, which might be changing soon. So if you want to lock in at this rate, I would do so. I'm not sure if I'm changing it at the end of this year or when that will be, but if you're going to invest thousands of dollars into a 12-session container, I would highly recommend that you trust my process and allow yourself to be guided through it. And I would hazard a guess that you will be fucking dumbfounded by the end of it. If you've known me, I know there's some people that have known me in my personal life that have watched these videos. If you've known me, you've probably witnessed me become an entirely different person over and over and over again in my life. And like, this is my superpower. So again, I want to recap that this is what the collective is currently being asked to do. And by asked, I mean we're being pushed into this. We don't have a choice. So, more or less, your options before you are don't do anything, keep going with trying to suppress, avoid, and what you have likely already noticed, if that's what you've been doing, which most people are doing, your internal or inner turmoil and well, we'll leave it at as your inner turmoil is getting cranked up, and it's like, fuck, man, like, I don't know if I can take much more of this. And it might not be that extreme, right? It might be that you are just starting to notice patterns that you're like, I really want to move past this, but like, I just feel like I just keep finding myself repeating the same patterns and seemingly not evolving past them and kind of shifting into something else. You can either keep going in that, right? I kind of see that as like a hamster wheel. Like you think you're moving forward, but you're kind of doing the same, like kind of like Groundhog Day, right? But maybe Groundhog Day is getting a little bit more like, ugh, like this isn't like it used to. I feel like a few years, like if we went like 8 years back, the energetics were made it a little easier to just like, let's just keep doing the same old fucking thing. And like, this is fine. This is life. This is what we do. Now something is different. That something is at an energetic level. And it's going to continue pushing us in this direction. So you can wait until the volume gets increased even more and hope that you navigate it well. Or the way I look at it is like, do you want to clean the house now? Or do you want to let it keep getting messier and messier and messier and then have to clean it when it's like, Jesus Christ, like how do we even, what do we do? You know, like how do we do this? Excuse me. Also a big fan of Jesus, just for the record. Yeah. So a few things I want to recap. One, this is what we're being guided to do. We don't really have a choice. It's kind of like you're gonna do what you need to do, or you're gonna keep putting it off and make it harder as we go further. The other really cool thing, so I connect into like where we're going, and I've seen where we are collectively going, and it's the people that do this work that get to go where I am going. You can go another direction, but my sense on that other direction, which would be like you just continue to avoid and try and pretend that like these things in you don't exist. I can see it visually. I don't necessarily. I'm still trying to navigate like what does that mean? And it feels like they're kind of in parallel, but then there's a point where it feels like this other one. It's like it's a sinking ship is the feeling. Like it's a sinking ship, and I don't know if that means you end your incarnation here and reincarnate elsewhere, because our planet is evolving. This planet that we're on right now is evolving. And so it's like shit or get off the pot, right? Now I'm grossed out, like, please, we're not shitting, right? But you know what I mean? Like, we're, like, it's go time. And you don't really have a choice aside from, like, you're just not going to partake. It's going to get even more uncomfortable. And you can decide way later to join the party, but it's going to be much harder then. I can promise you that. The where we're going is the people that do this work transmute their shadow into gifts, and now they offer that to the collective, and we shift into becoming the ecosystem that we're designed to be, moving in harmony with the natural world, not fighting it. And there's not shame, we're not moving from fear, and we recognize that we are co-creators, and we begin consciously deciding what we are creating. Clearly what we've been creating, so we create from what we hold. That includes our shadow. So when we create perpetuating patterns in our life that we don't want, it's in your shadow. If you're not consciously choosing it and it's still happening over and over again, you're creating from a pattern that is like you are the source and you are, well, it's almost like you're creating the pattern out from you. That's an energetics thing. I don't really know how to explain that. But if you're creating something, there's a repeat pattern theme in your life and you're creating it and you don't like it, it's born from your shadow. So I think I'm going to leave it there for now. If anyone has questions, if anyone has comments, if anyone wants to book a session. I know I've had some other people from some of my other videos reach out for sessions. There's information in my on my channel page on how to contact me on various social media platforms. You can start with one of my one-off sessions to just check things out. Or you can dive right into my metamorphosis container, which is a 12-session container. I think that is everything. And yeah, I want to say that I'm really honored to get to be the person that is taking people through these transformations. I love this. And this is also a great example of like going from karma to dharma. Karma is trying to help us course correct and come into harmony and balance within ourselves. Dharma is I've alchemized shadow aspects into gifts, and now I get to offer those gifts, right? So when I stop being afraid of parts of myself, then they alchemize and now they're the gift expression, and now I just naturally understand what it is that like lights my heart up that I'm so excited to do, and it's an offering, it's a gift to the collective, so people want to receive it. So we don't have to do like fucking market analysis, and I mean sure, do market analysis, but like the way things naturally are designed to function is, and we're shifting into much more flow. We've been in a masculine dominant expression. We're shifting into flow while also having structures, which is the masculine. And we still need discipline, which is more of a masculine energy. We all have the masculine and feminine within us, right? So what we're shifting into is out of purely masculine expression, which is all about discipline, pushing things forward, structure, mental analysis, and like linearity, into union. So we're going to have flow and structure. We're going to allow ourselves to be tender with ourselves and have discipline when we're intended to have discipline. But there's going to be a lot more flow and moving into having awareness of like natural laws and understanding how to create, creating from a conscious place. And so what's beautiful is like when we shift into this way of moving, it's like we just do what lights us up, and the people come because we have people that that are meant to receive our gifts. But until we do the work to transmute and shift into these gift expressions, we don't get to live that life. We have to stay in this old way of functioning that requires a lot of effort. It's usually quite painful. It usually feels like we're hiding parts of ourselves, and so we're always terrified of people getting to know the real us and then abandoning us, and a whole host of other things. And we're not having deeply satiating relationships, both at the friendship level and the romantic partnership level, because we haven't met ourselves deeply, and so we don't even have the capacity to know or interact with people at deeper levels. So if that appeals to you and you want to start your journey, reach out to me with the information that is in the information in my channel, on my channel homepage. If anyone has requests on things you want me to cover on a future video, please feel free to drop them in the comments, or leave any other comments that you have for me. All right, I love you, and please be brave. The world might look chaotic out there, but this is exactly what we're meant to be in, and it's designed to wake people up. So please know that the world is not falling apart. We are just at a very critical juncture in our evolution, and it is time for us to wake up and grow up basically as a collective. So I love you guys, and I will see you all on the next one.